Horror movies. Love them or hate them, there's no denying how versatile of a film genre horror is. You have horror comedies, monster movies, slashers, zombies, gorefest, paranormal, vampires, psychological horrors, cosmic horrors, and even horror musicals. The genre has so much to offer, and I'd argue it's one of the most creatively rich genres in all of movies. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, the slasher genre specifically was synonymous with horror. It was almost as if they were one and the same. I mean, if you were talking about a horror movie, people would immediately think of Chucky, Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Ghostface, hell, Leatherface. And the slasher genre, I'd argue, is probably the most important subgenre in horror. I mean, it absolutely ruled the 80s with an iron fist, and the genre was revived in the 90s with Wes Craven's Scream. I'd also argue that some of the most important and influential horror movies ever made are slasher movies. I mean, just look at Halloween and Scream in particular. And since Halloween just passed, I thought about going back and revisiting the classics and seeing what all the hype's about, seeing the legacy that they laid, and ranking them at the end of the series, because that's, always fun to do. Rankings are fun. And with that intro out of the way, let's just jump straight into it with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Released in 1974 and directed by Tobe Hooper, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre tells the story of a group of friends who trek into rural Texas to visit the gravesite of one of their grandfathers. But upon doing so, they stumble across what seems to be an abandoned house, only to discover something lurking within its walls. Something wielding a chainsaw. Now, you can say whatever you want about this franchise and the sequels that followed the original, because if we're being totally honest, these movies go completely off the fucking rails and into absurdity. I mean, we get chainsaw duels in an abandoned theme park. We get an inbred Matthew McConaughey who thinks that the US government is after him.
Get that bitch! Yeah!
And the Oscar goes to Matthew McConaughey.
I mean, this franchise, it just loses its mind, man. And then we get this lovely, lovely line.
Do your thing, cuz.
And then we get this other great line.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
I mean, this franchise is full of great lines.
Oh, fuck.
But this movie, the original, is incredibly visceral and disturbing. And, ironically, I've seen a lot of the opposites said online nowadays when it comes to this movie. I mean, at least from the gore standpoint, because with a name like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the legacy that this film has, you'd assume the first one is exactly that. But it's really not. The movie barely has any blood in it, like, at all. But this movie doesn't need blood and gore to be disturbing, because it just is, man. I mean, the way that it's filmed, the way that it's edited, the way it's lit, the way it's acted, it all just feels so dirty and naturalistic. I mean, especially the violence. A lot of it is on screen with very little editing, and it makes it feel all the more gritty and unsettling. I mean, when we first meet Leatherface and he clubs that dude in the face, he knocks him down with one hit to the skull with a hammer, because that's just probably what would happen. And you see him twitching on the ground afterwards. I mean, it's gnarly stuff. And I also find it kind of funny how this movie is basically a reverse home invasion story. I mean, the teens just straight up break into the Sawyer's house and start going through their shit. That being said, this classic is not without its problems. And while I do enjoy Tobe Hooper's direction here, because undoubtedly there's some great filmmaking on display here, the middle portion of the movie feels a bit repetitive for me. I mean, the whole nighttime chase sequence just kind of goes on forever, it feels like. It really is just Sally running around and screaming for what feels like 15 whole minutes. And of course, we later get the dinner scene, which is just one of the most fucked up scenes in any movie that I've seen. I guess by today's standards, it's not that bad, but contextually, within the confines of the film and the world that it sits up, it is just so fucking scary, man. I mean, just the scene with Grandpa, it is so... it gets my skin crawling. All in all, though, I really enjoyed this one. It's got great direction, it's very well shot and edited, the aesthetic is so grimy and nasty too, I love it. And the ending is just awesome yet unsettling, and just about everyone on screen is giving it their all, man. Plus, Leatherface is my personal favorite amongst the slasher bunch, even though I don't know if you really consider this movie a slasher, but still, I like this movie a lot. It's my personal favorite, so it gets brownie points for me. And if you're at all more interested in learning about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the inner workings of the movie and just the history behind it, there's a great podcast by the folks over at Dead Meat on YouTube that is so well done and so insightful. I'd really recommend checking it out. It's fantastic.
Hello?
I'm your boyfriend now.
Released 10 years later in 1984 and directed by our boy Wes Craven, A Nightmare on Elm Street follows Nancy Thompson as she and her friends are tormented in their dreams by the sadistic, bladed glove-wielding Freddy Krueger. Catch is, if they die in their dreams, they die in real life. Ooh, spooky. So watching this movie after seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you really notice how much of a actual movie this is. Like, Texas Chainsaw almost feels like an experimental film, almost like a student film. You know, it's very indie feeling. But this movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, feels like a legitimate studio film. I mean, it basically launched, the fuck is that studio called? You know, the one with the intro. New Line? Is it New Line? I think it's New Line. Whatever. Anyway, point is, it just feels like an actual movie with a legitimate budget. You know, there's production value here. And on top of that, I mean, it's Johnny Depp's film debut here. I mean, just look at his fucking face. Look at this baby face Johnny Depp.
I'm gonna punch out your ugly lights, whoever you are.
Beyond Johnny Depp, though, of course, we have Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, who undoubtedly carries the entire franchise. And I find it interesting how, you know, in most horror franchises, you have a masked person played by a plethora of different actors. You know how you'll have like a Jason or a Michael Myers or even a Leatherface, but they're not all played by the same actor underneath the mask. It might be the same character, but it's not the same actor. Meanwhile, Robert Englund has played Freddy Krueger pretty much in every movie besides the remake that we're not going to talk about.
What game do you want to play next?
Fuck you.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
And of course, Robert Englund is just fantastic as the role of Freddy Krueger. And I do think he's carrying the film because the other performances here leave a lot to be desired.
You better keep her home for a few days until she really gets over the shock of this.
I've got something better. I'm going to get her some help.
Oh boy. Particularly in our lead. I haven't seen the other movies in the future, and I haven't seen this other actress's work, but in this movie, she's not the best, in my opinion. I think a lot of her delivery is a little wooden.
Rod is not a lunatic, Dad.
I don't know. I think her performance is fine for what it is. She gets the job done, but in some of those emotional scenes, it's not really hitting. Beyond all that, though, I mean, the film's just really solid. It's got really good editing. It's shot pretty well. There's some legitimately creepy scenes in here, and I mean, it's just full of incredibly iconic moments. And I also think the plot is pretty compelling and interesting. I mean, you have these reoccurring dreams amongst these kids with Freddy Krueger, which ultimately leads to the death of one of them, and the greaser guy gets framed for her death. So you have these guys searching for this greaser guy while they're also trying to figure out how Freddy's killing these people in their dreams. Surprisingly, the plot was kind of captivating me. I'm not gonna lie. This wasn't just a movie that I was just watching to watch people die. I was kind of invested in the story. Wait, is that the guy from the basement scene in Zodiac?
Would you like to go upstairs and check?
Holy shit, it is.
You're welcome.
But by the end, I mean, you know, shit just kind of goes crazy as usual with these slasher movies, and it was kind of losing me towards the end. I mean, Freddy's power levels are just all over the place. Sometimes he can teleport, sometimes he's stuck behind a wall, and then he gets like Home Alone. The ending just gets a little too crazy for me and a little too wacky, and I also think it's weird how Freddy gains like 50 fucking pounds in the scene when he's set on fire because of the fire suit I'm assuming the actor had to wear. It's still fucking goofy looking, but I also think the movie has a really good soundtrack. I don't really think it fits at all, but it's really good. I was really rocking with the music in certain scenes. And for anyone who's ever seen the movie, the ending is just so dumb. I mean, beyond what happens to the mom, the fact that our main hero just rides away in the Freddy mobile, I mean, come on. All in all, I think this is a really solid watch. I really enjoyed this one, actually.
Come to Freddy.
Talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch! You filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
Child's Play, released in 1988 and directed by Tom Holland. Yeah, not that Tom Holland.
I went to the toilet. I was 11.
Tells the story of Charles Lee Ray, a murderer who uses black magic to transfer his soul into a good guy doll named Chucky. And from there on, madness ensues. So right off the rip with this one, I will say this up front. Chucky is probably my least known slasher. I don't really have any connection to this franchise at all. When I was younger, kids didn't really talk about Chucky. It was more so about Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. I don't know. He just wasn't really in the conversation, I guess. So I don't really know too much about it. I just know it's about a killer doll and, you know, that's really it. But surprisingly, this movie, I guess all these movies are just kind of surprising me, is pretty solid. I actually really enjoyed this one. My girlfriend loves Chucky, and she was having a really good time when we were watching it, so maybe I enjoyed it because of that as well. But this movie is really solid. I think it starts off pretty strong. I think the intro is really fun. It's pretty engaging. It has a nice setup. Although, the issue I do have with the beginning as well, and I think it's an issue that I have with this movie in general, is that I feel as though it kind of shows its hand too early. You know, right away, it immediately tells you that Charles Lee Ray is possessing the doll, and that it is a possessed doll movie. Because as I'm watching it, I'm thinking this movie would have been a lot better if I just never saw the intro. Like, even though the intro is a good scene, and it's a really good, you know, introduction to the movie, is very entertaining, I think story-wise, it would have been better just not knowing. I think seeing the movie unfold, and you as the audience guessing, is this doll really alive, or is Andy just like a sicko? And is Andy really taking people out, you know, and framing the doll, or pretending like the doll's doing it, and he's just crazy, or because of the loss of his father, or something?
I didn't do that.
Oh no, what did Chucky do? Walk into the living room and turn it on all by himself?
Did you do that, Chucky?
That could have been an interesting angle, and that's kind of what the movie is doing already. He's even wearing the same outfit as Chucky for a lot of the movie too. But you as the audience know that Andy's completely innocent because we know that Chucky is evil. So I don't know, it's tough sitting there for a lot of the movie's runtime and just seeing bad shit happening, and you know it's Chucky the whole time. You know, like, there's no real mystery, I guess is just what I'm trying to say. I get that we're supposed to be in the know with Andy and sympathize with him because, you know, all this bad stuff is happening around him. But I don't know. I was sort of just waiting for Chucky to start running around and killing people rather than really being fully invested in the mystery / investigation aspect of the story. And I guess another quick negative, since we're talking about negatives here, I think the characterization of just everyone in here is pretty weak, including Chucky himself. Even though I like the performances, I think the characterization is not great. No one is really that interesting or fully fleshed out. They're all kind of just there to spout lines and to keep things going. Like, seriously, some of these performances are so lifeless. Like, particularly this cop character, he's in the movie throughout. He gives like no fucks. His delivery is so dry and so lifeless. There's no enthusiasm ever.
Don't you touch one part! All right, look, take it easy, okay? Just relax yourself, all right?
And I think that in part has to do with the dialogue. I mean, almost all the dialogue in this movie is legit, just straight to the point. And I think that's good from a pacing standpoint because the movie is not boring at all. It's just you're constantly moving. It's just that, at least in my opinion, some of these characters don't feel like actual people. There's basically no downtime in this movie at all. I mean, every single line of dialogue is basically about the plot. There's not a single conversation that takes place outside of the plot. And, you know, like I said, hey, when Chucky does start running around and killing people, it is really fucking funny and it is very entertaining. I really like Chucky as a character, even though he doesn't have a lot going on beyond just kind of being a bad dude and wanting to leave his body. I do like his performance, and I do think he's got some funny lines. And I do think some of the filmmaking here is pretty interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, I think if the movie went the route of not knowing whether or not Chucky is actually possessed, some of these POV shots could be interpreted differently. You know, you would look at these as maybe it's Andy or maybe it's Chucky, but since we know Chucky's evil, all these shots are definitely Chucky. Chucky's a little bad dude. I also just think it's really fun looking at the different Chuckies throughout the movie. I mean, it was sort of like a little mini game for me, looking at Chucky and trying to figure out, is he an animatronic? Is he a puppet? Is he just an actual actor in this scene and they're playing with camera angles, or is maybe it's like a smaller person? I really enjoyed that aspect, just kind of trying to take note of the filmmaking techniques, I guess. That all being said, I think the movie just kind of ends. Like, they take out Chucky and then the movie ends within a minute. Like, it literally just fucking ends right there. There's no falling action, there's no epilogue, it just ends right almost in the middle of the scene. It's very weird. So yeah, really solid. Another solid one. These movies are really surprising me. I kind of thought they wouldn't hold up today. You know, I mean, I guess they are classics for a reason, but I guess I was just kind of preying on their downfall a little bit. I don't know. I guess it's me being a dickhead, but whatever. Moving on.